What up? I'm Shep Papelka. This is the Braves TomaBlog. Talk about the Braves and baseball in general. And while spring training is going on, I'm obliged to get into some of the more aggregate systems in baseball. Talk about some broader topics. On that, I have something that's been going through my head throughout the last couple of days, which is what I have a video on today, which is assessing what is the most valuable asset in baseball. I have this divided into what I have determined to be the four most valuable assets that you can have. Those assets include cash, prospects, major league talent, and time. And you sort of question, how is time an asset? It's a liability, and that's actually, very true in the case of like the Red Sox, the Yankees, the Dodgers, who don't allow teams time, or for the Royals, whose contracts are about to run out, or the Tigers as well, whose players are aging. And that's true, and that's why time is the most tricky asset, is that it's the only asset that can be in the negative. Time can actually be, very much against you, where the amount of cash you have is always going to be positive. The amount of prospects you have can either be, very little, or it can be much. And your major league talent it will always be an asset. Time can go against you. That said, it can be very valuable when used right. With that, I will get into them in order, going from least to most valuable. The least of the most valuable assets, being the number 4 most valuable asset, is what we just talked about, time. It is the least valuable asset of these. And the reason for that is because time guarantees nothing. Time can't make your draft picks for you, and time can't sign your international prospects for you. What's clear about time is that it's not necessary. The Red Sox don't need it, the Yankees don't need it, the Dodgers don't need it to be consistently competitive teams year in and year out. And the other thing that proves that it's not as valuable as the other things is that the Twins still suck. Despite having all these top 5 draft picks, despite taking the time to be good again, and it's evidenced by decades of mediocrity. For teams, teams like the Pirates and the Blue Jays and the Mariners can go decades without playoff appearances. And it sort of speaks to, I wrote here, with the Tampa Bay Rays took a decade from their inception to make the playoffs, despite being the worst team in baseball throughout much of that time, and that's fairly rare. How can you be a consistently bottom 5 team in the league? It's because time can't make your draft picks for you. Josh Hamilton, Delman Young, Tim Beckham, these are number 1 overall draft picks that the team made. That's why time can be valuable if it's used right, if it's offered to allow you to use your other ways to accumulate value. The number 3 most valuable asset in baseball, and I contemplated over this one because it was kind of tough. Because as far as major league talent, cash, and prospects, they all vary because other teams make it with different combinations of all of these. But to me, the number 3 most valuable is prospects. Why is that? It's because prospects are fairly static in their nature, in that they can only be turned into actual value by being turned into major league talent. That's the only thing that prospects can ever be converted to. You can't trade them for cash. They're prospects. They don't have their own value in themselves. All you can do is hope that they work out over time. That's why you need time. Or you can trade them for prospects, or trade them for major league talent. And upon that, they have the highest risk per unit of any asset in baseball. Prospects are the highest risk, especially if you trade a major league player or you draft a player, and you need that prospect to work out. They have an absurd tendency to bust and to not work out. Let me ask, what's worse for the Oakland Athletics? Is it worse to lose the money or the prospects? They trade Josh Donaldson. What's worse for them? If Franklin Barreto doesn't work out and they get nothing of value out of that trade, or if they had paid Josh Donaldson through arbitration and he gets hurt, and they lose $15 to $20 million that year with no production from Donaldson? I would take the arbitration. It's much worse that you would trade your franchise player and get nothing in return because that prospect just didn't work out. That said, with them being the highest risk per unit asset, they're also the highest reward per unit asset. So, years ago, the Orioles were at a crossroad where they could either sign Eric Bedard or they could trade him. They traded him for Adam Jones, so you have and other players. But you take Adam Jones versus what you could have signed in Eric Bedard. Who gets the team more wins above replacement in the long term? Obviously, it was Adam Jones. Just because there's high reward to gaining prospects. The number 2 most valuable asset. I said cash, and I kind of went back and forth right at the end because perhaps it is more valuable because teams that are consistently good all the time tend to be the richest teams. And that said, at the same time, money doesn't buy you anything. Teams get money and they often spend it wrong, or the Yankees often spend it wrong on Jacoby Ellsbury and Mark Teixeira, Brian McCann, etc. Many more. Would you rather have money or prospects? Let me put it to you this way. Would you rather have $1 million today, or would you rather have a house that is worth $3 million, but you can't live in it or sell it for at least 5 years? I would take the money. I would take the money that is up front. Why? Because, I know how to use this $1 million up front. I know what that is. I know how to take that and assess the risk from here to later. I would rather that than have the house where I have to worry about closing costs, I have to worry about upkeep, I have to worry about insurance. If it's by the beachfront, I got to worry even more. It's something that has to be turned into value later, where with cash, you get to determine how to use it. You get to assess the risk and the reward today. And the other reason I put for cash that it is more valuable is because money recreates itself. In the American capitalist economy, you have increased payroll every single year. The effect of inflation and TV contracts gives more value to a team on a year-in, year-out basis than your draft picks and your international slots do. You have to become very fortunate for those to work out. Your cash that you're given, that's just yours. That's just determined, and you can expect it to increase every single year unless you're like the Mets or something. And the last reason is that it's the most static of the assets in professional baseball. There are rich teams and there are poor teams. There are in-between teams. Those don't really change. Those have been the same forever and they will remain the same forever. And it tends to be because of the market. Now, there are blips on the radar. There are times when a team gets a new TV contract and they feel like they're rich and they'll send out a big contract for Robinson Cano or Zach Greinke. There will be times when a team comes under a new ownership group. Or there will be an owner that wants to spend more and more in order to get a championship in the immediate. But as a whole, those don't change very much. With the TV contracts, when you get that, you feel wealthy. In a couple of years, when other teams get their TV contracts, you're right back to the middle of the league. So you have the money that you have. You are where you're at in terms of wealth, and that can't change, where every other thing, time, prospects, major league talent, that all changes rapidly. But I take that to the most valuable the most valuable asset in all of baseball. And to me, it's very clear. It's major league talent. Major league talent is by far, outdoes any of the other forms because Major League talent can stand on its own. Major League talent is the sport in itself. Everything else revolves around it. And to me, Major League talent can determine, how the Royals can win the World Series in 2015 when the team has no money, and the team has no prospects, and the team has no time. And they can still win the World Series. They can still make that happen. The other reason is that Major League players can be turned into any other asset besides time. If you got major leaguers, what do you want? You got prospects, trade it for prospects, you got the best farm system. You want cash, trade it for cash considerations, now you're richer. If you want more major league talent, trade your major leaguers for other major leaguers. You can still do that, and the risk is actually not as high as it is if you're trading prospects. You know, you can trade your Major League talent for other Major League talent. Your team is still good. I can promise you that the Chicago Cubs could sit down today and trade every single player on that team for other Major Leaguers. If they traded Chris Bryant, Anthony Rizzo, Javier Baez, Addison Russell, Contreras, for all other Major Leaguers, the team would still be the favorite in the NL Central. The team would still be extremely good. That's just how malleable Major League talent is. Why are the Indians a good organization? Are they rich? Do they have lots of cash? No. Do they have lots of prospects, a deep farm system? No. Did they tank and take lots of time in order to get here? No. They just have lots of Major League talent. That, you know, Mike Napoli, Corey Kluber, they have the guys that make it work at the Major League level alone, and that's what makes them valuable. The Cubs have all four. The Cubs have the four. They're wealthy in every area of the game. Boston, New York, LA, they have talent, prospects, and money. The Phillies have time, prospects, and money. The White Sox have time, prospects, and Major League talent. The A's have time and prospects. Ideally, you can have four, but that's incredibly difficult because there are only 4 or 5 teams who can actually have all four. Because, like I said, the money doesn't change. That's why, to me, Theo Epstein is the smartest man in all of baseball. Either way, I'm Shep Papelka. This is the Braves TomaBlog. I appreciate you watching, and go Braves.